Under a car park in Hamburg, behind a fence that needs a passport, 3 submarines sit where their crews left them in 1945. The shed built to hold them was too strong to demolish, so the Germans filled it with gravel and buried the boats inside. Europe is full of these concrete monsters, roofs up to 9 meters thick, built to shrug off the heaviest bombs. Most survived the war. Then they survived the peace, because nobody could pull them down. 10 today, and number 1 is a block in Bordeaux the Allies never tried to touch. It began in the winter of 1941 on the French Atlantic coast, with a machine for pouring concrete faster than anyone had managed before. Number 10. Saint-Nazaire, France. On the estuary of the Loire, in the heart of a working town, there is a grey concrete slab the length of 3 football pitches, with a supermarket built against one side and a walkway across the roof. This is the largest of the French U-boat bases, and one of the largest structures the Nazis built anywhere. Organisation Todd began it in February 1941, on the site of the old transatlantic passenger docks, and finished the 14 pens in about 18 months. The men who poured its 480,000 cubic metres of concrete were listed as guest workers, a polite phrase for a workforce that was in large part conscripted and foreign. The roof went up in layers of granite and reinforced concrete in places nearly 9 meters thick. In March 1942, the British mounted a raid here, Operation Chariot, and rammed an old destroyer packed with explosives into the neighbouring dry dock to wreck it. It worked, and the dry dock was out of action for years. The submarine pens, the real target underneath all that concrete, were untouched. After the war, the Allies looked at the thing, worked out what it would cost to remove, and left it standing. Today, you can walk in off the street. Part of it is a museum about the ocean liners that once sailed from here. Part of it is an arts venue, and the roof is a public terrace. It is still exactly where the Germans left it, minus the submarines. 200 miles down the coast, the next one had a second life the men who built it could never have pictured. Number 9. La Pallice, La Rochelle, France. La Pallice is the deep water port of La Rochelle, and its bunker is the one you have almost certainly seen, even if you do not know it. Construction started in April 1941. 10 pens, and a double roof more than 7 meters thick with a burster layer designed to set a bomb off before it reached the main slab. In the summer of 1944, the RAF hit it with 6 tall boys, the 5-ton earthquake bombs Barnes-Wallis designed to punch through exactly this kind of target. The upper roof was badly chewed. The lower roof held, and not one submarine inside was lost. When the film Das Boot needed an authentic U-boat pen in 1981. This is where they shot the interiors, and the same year, the submarine hangar in Raiders of the Lost Ark was filmed in the same building. So the claustrophobic bunker in your memory of both films is real, and it is still standing. The French Navy uses part of it for storage. The rest you can visit. When the town was besieged in the last year of the war, 20,000 German troops held out here, supplied entirely by submarine, and did not surrender until the 8th of May 1945, the day the war in Europe ended. The last U-boat had arrived 5 days before that, carrying fuel, and left again. The pens it sheltered in have not changed since. The next base along the coast did not surrender until it had cost 10,000 men. Number 8. Brest, France. At the tip of Brittany, Brest was one of the most important U-boat ports of the war, and it is one you cannot get near today because the concrete stands inside an active French naval base. 330 meters long, a roof over 6 meters thick, room for 20 submarines. This was home to the 9th Flotilla, and to a boat called U-96, the submarine the war correspondent Lothar Gunther Buchheim sailed on in 1941, and later turned into the novel and film Das Boot. Its most famous commander, Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock, the model for the captain in that film, was the man who took the very last U-boat out of Brest on the 4th of September 1944 and got it to Norway. Everyone who could not leave was ordered to hold the port to the last man, and they did. The Americans attacked from the end of July, and Brest did not fall until the 21st of September, after a siege that cost United States forces more than 10,000 casualties, for a harbour the Germans had already stopped using. The RAF had thrown tall boys at the bunker in August. 9 hit. 5 went through the outer roof and did almost nothing. The bunker is still there, behind a wire fence with warning signs, close enough to photograph from the road and no closer. Not every base got as far as a siege. Some never got finished at all. Number 7. The Martha Base, Marseille, France. Everything so far has been on the Atlantic. This one is on the Mediterranean, in the port of Marseille, and it was meant to be the flagship of a whole new U-boat war in the south. The Germans started it in 1943, after Italy left the war and the Mediterranean suddenly needed holding. The plan was a base for 20 submarines, 13 docks, walls and ceilings 5.5 meters thick. They ran short of steel, so the reinforcement inside parts of the concrete is old railway sleepers. And then they ran out of time. Allied bombers hit Marseille in December 1943, killing about 40 people at the site. And the city was liberated in August 1944, with the base still unfinished, a monolith on the waterfront with no submarines and no war to fight. It sat empty for more than 70 years, collecting graffiti and dust, until a Dutch company spent well over €100 million turning it into a data centre. Behind those walls, where torpedoes were meant to hang, there are now racks of servers, cooled and humming, holding a good slice of the internet for southern Europe. If you are enjoying this, take a second to subscribe, because there is a version of this for every coast in Europe, and I will get to the strangest one on the list in a moment. The French and Mediterranean pens mostly got a second life. The ones closer to Germany did not get off so lightly. Number 6. The Bruno Bunker, Bergen, Norway. In the Laksevåg district of Bergen, on the Norwegian coast, the Germans built a 7-pen bunker with a roof 6 meters thick and called it Bruno. After the French bases began to close in 1944, Bergen became one of the most important U-boat harbours left, which made it a target. On the 4th of October 1944, a large RAF raid came in to destroy it, and the bombing scattered. Most of it missed the bunker and fell across the town, and one bomb went through the roof of a school. 193 Norwegians were killed that morning, 61 of them children. The bunker itself was barely marked. The RAF came back in January 1945 with tall boys, and this time 3 of them found the target. One punched clean through the roof and left a hole 8 meters wide. It was the only real wound any of these bombs ever gave a U-boat pen, and even then, the structure stood. The Norwegian Navy still uses Bruno today. You can see it from the water, a low grey block on the far shore, holding the same kind of submarines that a different flag now sends to sea. The hole in the roof was patched. The names of the children are on a memorial a short walk away. Across the North Sea, the Germans faced a problem of their own making. What do you do with a fortress you cannot knock down, in a city you have to rebuild from the ground up? Number 5. Fink 2, Hamburg, Germany. On the Elbe, at Finkenwerder, across the river from the Blohm and Voss shipyard, Fink 2 was the largest U-boat bunker in Germany itself. 5 pens, room for 15 submarines, 130,000 cubic meters of concrete. It was built over roughly 4 years by around 1,700 slave labourers, many of them from the Neuengamme concentration camp on the edge of the city. That is worth saying plainly. These bunkers were not only poured by soldiers and paid contractors. The largest of them stood on the backs of prisoners, and some of those prisoners did not survive the building of them. When the war ended, the British decided Fink 2 had to go. In October 1945, the Royal Engineers packed it with captured German ordnance and blew it up, more than 30 tons of explosive in one go. It cracked the structure open and left most of it standing. The rubble was too vast and too solid to clear economically, so in 1973 they simply covered what was left and moved on. Then, in 2002, part of the ruin was dug back out and kept deliberately as a memorial. You can stand at Finkenwerder now and look at broken slabs of a bunker that 30 tons of explosive could crack but not erase, with the shipyard cranes still working behind it. Down the coast at Kiel, the demolition men had even less luck. Number 4. The Kilian Bunker, Kiel, Germany. Kiel was the home of the German Navy, and Kilian was one of its shelters, a 2-pen bunker on the water. When the British came to demolish it after the war, in October 1946, they drilled the walls, packed in more than 12 tons of explosive, and set it off. The blast wrecked the middle wall and the ceiling, and buried a submarine, U-4708, under the falling concrete. A second boat alongside U-17 should have gone down with it, except its captain had ordered every hatch closed even though the boat was tied up inside a bunker. And that single precaution is the only reason it stayed afloat. And still, Kilian would not come fully down. What was left of it sat there, cracked, half-flooded and awkward, for the rest of the century. It outlasted the occupation, the founding of a new German state, and most of the Cold War. Only between 1999 and 2002, when Kiel needed the ground for a modern container terminal and the numbers finally made sense, was Kilian at last cleared away for good. It is the one on this list that people did, eventually, manage to remove. It took them nearly 60 years and a shipping boom to do it. If Kilian shows how hard these were to remove by hand, the next one shows what it took to do it properly. Number 3, Nordsee. 3, Heligoland, Germany. Heligoland is a tiny island out in the North Sea, a square kilometre of red rock, and one of the oldest U-boat pens of the whole programme sat in its harbour. By the end of the war, the bunker and the fortress, tunnelled through the island around it, were largely intact. The British wanted the place made permanently useless as a naval base, and they had an enormous quantity of surplus wartime explosive they needed to get rid of, so they combined the two problems. On the 18th of April, 1947, having packed the submarine bunker and the tunnel network with roughly 4,000 torpedo warheads, 9,000 depth charges, and more than 90,000 shells, the Royal Navy set off the lot at once. More than 6,000 tons of explosive. It was, at the time, the largest man-made non-nuclear explosion there had ever been, registered on seismographs on the mainland. A blast of around 3 kilotons that lifted the south end of the island into the air. And Heligoland was still there. The explosion tore the fortifications apart and reshaped the coastline, but the island held, and people were allowed to move back 5 years later. When it takes the biggest bang in history to deal with the defences on one small island, you start to see the scale of the problem the rest of them posed, which brings us back to where we started. Number 2, Elbe 2, Hamburg, Germany. This is the one from the start of the video. Elbe 2 was a small bunker in the Hamburg docks. 2 pens, built early, in 1940 and 41. In the last days of the war, several U-boats were sheltering inside it, including 3 of the brand new Type 21 boats, the most advanced submarines Germany ever launched, and far too late to change anything. As the British closed in, the pen was wrecked and the boats were scuttled where they lay. 3 of the Type 21s, U-2505, U-30-004 and U-35-06, ended up trapped inside the ruined structure. And here the story turns strange. Rather than spend years and a fortune cutting the boats out and the bunker down, the authorities filled the whole thing with gravel and left the submarines where they were. They were rediscovered in 1985, still down there. Souvenir hunters worked out the position of the hatches from the surface and dug down to reach them, so the site was sealed over again. And today it lies under a car park inside the free port of Hamburg. To stand on the ground above 3 buried U-boats, you need a passport to get through the gate. And then there is the one they never even tried. Number 1, the Bordeaux base, on the Bassin à Flotte, Bordeaux, France. Bordeaux sits about 90 kilometers inland, up the Garonne, which is exactly why the Germans wanted it. A U-boat could come up the river, disappear into a bunker in the middle of a French city, and be almost impossible to reach on the way in. The site was first used by the Italian Navy, who called their flotilla Beta Somme, and the name stuck to the base. In the summer of 1941, Admiral Karl Donitz ordered a bomb-proof bunker built here, and Organisation Todd began work that September. What they raised over the next 19 months is difficult to take in at ground level. 245 metres long, 162 wide, around 600,000 cubic metres of concrete, more than any other pen on this list, with a roof reinforced up to 9 metres thick. It took roughly 6,500 workers to build, and more than a third of them were Spanish Republicans, refugees from Franco's Spain handed over to the Germans as forced labour. On the 17th of May, 1943, American bombers came for it. They dropped 198 bombs on Bordeaux. The raid killed around 195 of those Spanish labourers, the men who had built the thing, and left the bunker itself with barely a scratch. The concrete was safe. The people were not. The last U-boats left in August 1944. When the Allies took the city, they found the bunker undamaged, and then they ran into the problem that gives this whole list its shape. There was no practical way to demolish it. It was too big, too solid, and too close to everything else, and taking it down would have cost more and done more damage than leaving it alone, so they left it. And Bordeaux, over the next 80 years, did the only thing it could. It grew around the thing it could not remove. For decades, the base was a sealed and slightly sinister blank in the heart of the docks, a place local children dared each other to climb into at night. Today, 4 of its pens are flooded and dark, and the rest hold one of the strangest reuses of all. They pump the water back in on purpose now, and project paintings across the concrete and the surface of the water, a digital art gallery inside a submarine bunker. The bombers could not break it. The peace could not remove it. The city just turned the lights on and let people in. There are places you cannot visit because they are dangerous, and places you cannot visit because someone in uniform will stop you. These are different. These are the places nobody could get rid of. 10 bunkers, poured by prisoners and forced labourers to shelter a weapon that lost the war and then too strong to tear down once the war was over. Some were blown up and refused to disappear. One took the largest non-nuclear explosion in history, and a small island barely noticed. Most were simply left, and the towns around them did what towns do. They built car parks on top, or museums inside, or filled them with servers, or turned them into galleries. The submarines are long gone. Many of the men who built these places are still in the ground beneath them. The concrete is here, and on current evidence, it will outlast everyone watching this. It was built to be permanent. It still is. If you want the next 10, wherever in Europe they are hiding, subscribe, and we will go and find them. Thank you.